How We Got Here. How we got here on a Monday afternoon, and today, coffee.
That's right. I have a feeling I'm not going to impress Kate since she knows so much about coffee.
Well, I'm here for you, John.
Thanks, Steve. I shall be addressing you.
Yes, please do.
Well, you know, as we know, in Korea, South Korea, we love our coffee. We talked about this. You can't walk 5 feet without running into some sort of cafe, right? Or vending machine or something.
100% true. Yep. And it really does cover the board. You've got the cheap coffee shops that you can get a coffee for maybe $1.50 around there. And then you've got the luxury, if that's the right word, international brands where you're going to pay 5,000 won or more.
Sure. And we've got all sorts of local roasters. I mean, I buy coffee beans from my neighborhood roasters. And it's a lot less expensive. And oftentimes it's much, much better.
I did an internet search. This was maybe a year or two ago. It was a Saturday morning and I really wanted a coffee, but I suddenly got curious. So I searched the best coffee in Seoul. And it directed me to one particular cafe just outside of the Itaewon area. And I went there. I got in the car and drove all the way there. It was 8,000 won or 9,000 won for one coffee.
What?
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty.
That's about $8 or $9.
Yeah.
But it was phenomenal. I think it might have been the best cup of coffee I've ever had.
Whoa.
I'm going to need to ask you a question after the show.
I will direct you straight to that place, yeah.
And, you know, the great thing about coffee in Korea is it's not just about the coffee, it's about the space in which you enjoy it. You know, they often describe coffee shops as a third space, right? Because our apartments here are quite small, you know, and you can't do stuff at work, so you meet for birthday parties, studying, what have you. And 76,000 coffee shops in South Korea as of 2019.
Is that right?
That's nuts. And 18,000 just in Seoul alone. I mean, that
surprising, but yet not surprising, I guess.
Right.
18,000 coffee shops in Seoul. That's crazy.
That's it?
Yeah, right. And the thing is, our love of coffee goes back a long time to the 1800s.
Whoa.
You know, like we've all heard of King Gojong.
Yes.
Right. And way back, what was he? The last king of the Joseon dynasty, first emperor of Korea. Those were turbulent times.
Yes.
And when he was hanging out with in the Russian legation, he met somebody named Antoinette Sontag.
Oh.
Last name might ring a bell. She introduced him to coffee. And apparently, he just fell for it.
Oh, really? Right away, huh?
Yeah, because at that time, a lot of Koreans were starting to become interested in foreign goods, right? And unfamiliar tastes.
Yeah.
So a few years after that, he found some property near Deoksugung Palace and said, you can build your hotel here if you'd like.
Okay.
So she built the Sontag Hotel,
Okay.
a legendary hotel, opened a cafe in there, and that was the first official cafe in Korea.
Oh, the first coffee shop in Korea.
That's right.
Was a foreign brand, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Serving coffee for dignitaries, political leaders, and, you know, rich businessmen, that sort of thing.
So she was from Russia or from France?
She was from, I think she's French, but she was the sister-in-law of the Russian ambassador.
So at that time, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but coffee plants don't grow well in Korea, or maybe they weren't commonly grown at that time.
They were imported.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the plants were imported?
No, the coffee was actually brought in, you know, by the Russian ambassador.
Got it.
And by Antoinette Sontag. So it was a very expensive product.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's take a little break and we'll talk more coffee when we come back. Here's Shipsenchi Americano. So we learned that the first coffee in Korea came from the sister-in-law of a Russian diplomat. And it was the first cafe was in a hotel that was also the first hotel here in the country. First foreign hotel, anyway.
That's right. And you know, that's kind of a pivotal thing because this is when the whole concept of the tabang, the coffee shop, right, really kind of started to pick up. It was kind of for the elites, you know, because that's the origin of coffee in Korea, right? It was a place where businessmen, rich businessmen, elites, politicians would go to hang out and talk about important things, right, with a cup of this foreign coffee. And the whole concept of tabang would really become important, you know, because as Korea evolved and modernized, more and more started to open up. So ordinary people can kind of go in and have a place to talk and share ideas.
So it became a thing that was only for the bourgeoisie, if you will, to a thing that was available to all of us.
Yeah, and that moment happened roughly in 1929 because of a filmmaker right in the Jongno area who decided to open his own cafe or his own tabang. And they furnished it with local photographs from photographers, art from local artists, and stage props and filmmaking props.
Wow.
And that kind of was like the first theme cafe,
Right.
tabang.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, proliferation of tabangs, for ordinary people.
So what would have happened is other business people would have seen that coffee shop doing really well and thought, I can make this too, or I want to make something like this too.
Yeah, that's right. Because, they realized that a lot of people needed this third space, to go hang out, share ideas with people that were like-minded. Because back then, there weren't just a whole lot of places you can hang out with friends, right? So that was a very important thing for Korean society.
And that was back in 1929.
Yeah, and then 29. So over the years, these things, coffee really didn't evolve all that much for a lot of reasons. Korea was under a political turmoil for many, many decades.
Yeah.
But thanks to one big piece of political turmoil, coffee got a big bump. The Korean War.
Oh.
Coffee got a bump as a result of that.
Yeah, because up until then, the coffee that they were drinking was like whatever they can get their hands on. 'Cause huge amounts of coffee wasn't being imported here like it is now.
Sure.
But during the Korean War, American soldiers had their rations of instant coffee.
Oh.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Wartime coffee, hot water is all you need, and then you're caffeinated.
And instant coffee would have been introduced to Korea for the very first time.
Right around then, yeah.
At that time. Fascinating. All right, we'll be closer to the end of the first hour. When we come back, here's Quinn XC2. I don't know how to say that. Marky Bassey, coffee. Okay, so American soldiers introduced instant coffee to the country.
That's right. And that just turned coffee culture in Korea on its head. It was born.
Yeah, exactly. Because then it's simple.
Yeah.
Then it's something that you don't need to go to a coffee shop to get.
Right.
You can just make it at home, right?
We weren't there yet, actually. That's the funny thing is the tabang, the cafe, still played an important role. They're the ones that got this instant coffee from black markets.
Okay.
And from the Army PXs that were set up.
Oh, so it's not like it was for sale, just anybody could go buy it anywhere.
Not yet. Soon though. But right after the war, corporate Korea started to appear, right? So people started going to the office in the morning and they were rushing and everybody's busy, kind of like we are now. And these tabangs were playing an important role because they were just about in every neighborhood. So these office workers would run, grab a cup of black coffee, drink it and run, and then get stomach aches. Because the coffee wasn't great.
Yeah, right.
We've all had powdered instant coffee.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
So they were having stomach aches. So some of these tabangs innovated. And what they did was they cracked a raw egg yolk inside this black coffee.
Oh, interesting.
Presumably to buffer the acid of the coffee.
I've never heard of a raw egg yolk in instant coffee before.
No, I
Yeah.
haven't.
And give them a little extra protein. So this kind of worked.
It's like breakfast.
Exactly. It became the famous morning coffee, as they called it. So it was like, kind of cool, right?
So that that was the it thing for a while.
That was the thing for a while until the next big revolution, as you just mentioned, mixed coffee. Now that came around in the mid-70s when a local company started to make this mixed coffee. And then coffee went from the tabang to the home anytime you wanted.
Right, because the coffee powder that you were talking about before, I was assuming that was the little packet things.
Right.
That already has the sugar and stuff inside.
Right.
That's not the case. That was simply the stuff that would be like a black coffee in a jar, right?
Exactly.
You spoon it out and mix it with water, but
That's
there's
right.
no... Oh.
And different cafes would have their own mixtures of creamer and sugar.
Yeah.
Oh,
so then somebody invented that. Was it invented in Korea?
No. It had been around before, but a local company got a license
okay.
from an American company to make it locally. And so it became super cheap, and it just entered everybody's house at that point. And what that actually did was that kind of primed Koreans' taste buds for good coffee.
Okay.
Because they were having it more and more. And that's the time when a lot of Koreans were going abroad, and they're going to the U.S., Europe, and they're going, hey, we want better coffee here. So
People were traveling more
Yeah.
and then experiencing different flavors and thought, let's bring that over here too.
Exactly. So the mid 80s, late 80s was just a hotbed of coffee here. And it all kind of came down to a head in the late 90s. Was it 1999? When a certain Star
Blank
brand
Oh, that's when
arrived.
Star Blank came, 1999.
Yeah, I was here
That's
in
pretty
99.
early.
I was here in 99 and 2000. And I saw that. My friends took me to that.
Where was the first one?
E-Day near
Okay.
Ewha University.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember going, hey, that's weird. The Star brand in the U.S. were not that big. They were small and cozy. This thing was like a 2 or 3, I think it was 3 stories, 4 stories.
Well, that's
okay.
big.
Kind of freaked out. So
I didn't realize that. The Star Blanks in the States are kind of tiny compared to the ones that we could see here.
Yeah, the ones that every one that I went to in San Diego and in Chicago were not big.
Interesting. So that would have been a big decision for that
Yeah.
for that company.
For sure.
What size of what style of shop do we want to make as our very very first one?
It's like go big or go home.
Apparently they were happy with it because that's the way they are today too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So, that's pretty much the evolution of all these coffee shops. And there are great tabangs, old school tabangs still serving, but they're serving better coffee now, of course.
Right.
Yeah, booze and all that kind of stuff. And you can visit them all over Seoul.
And then you have the smaller shops that are roasting their own beans,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you have the conglomerates from all over the world, and you have everything you could possibly want depending on your taste for coffee.
It's come a long way. In fact, we have, 350,000 baristas, trained baristas in Korea.
Oh, wow.
Trip out, right?
And what was the original stat? 77,000 coffee shops here in the country.
Yeah, nuts.
And that is how we got here.